You unhide yourself at the bottom. If you go to the bottom, you should be able to see video. It should just kind of pop up. Let me share my screen. I guess it won't let me share my Zoom screen, but at the bottom of the screen, it just should pop up if you want to show your video. Let's see. I'm trying to keep up with everybody as you log on. Francesca, you haven't missed anything. We just are fixing to start. We just started recording. Okay. So let's go to my screen again. All right. So we are in week 4. You're almost finished with this class, and then you'll go off to your new classes. So today we're going to talk about information. Let's go into chapter 5, and we'll go over the 2 chapters, and then we'll go back and we'll talk about the discussions and the homework for the week. So chapter 15, these 2 chapters were pretty interesting to me because it's something that you deal with whether you're in the workplace, you're at home. So the first thing is managing communication. So chapter 15, there's several different ways that we communicate. Right now we're communicating through the internet. We're using Zoom, we're doing teleconference. And so a lot of companies have different ways of communicating. For instance, when I worked at Enterprise, I managed all of the accounts that were in Europe. And so Europe and Canada. So I didn't get to go and visit face-to-face with those customers because that would cost the money for the company, whether I was flying or driving to Canada or whatever I had to do. So it was more efficient to be able to teleconference the customers, much like I'm talking to you guys through Skype or some other sort of technology. Another way currently at Ferguson, I get to do a lot of face-to-face, but I have a company issued cell phone. This is my cell phone with them, and I get to talk to them, to my customers, through text. And I'm dealing with plumbers who are in and out of jobs, and so sometimes it's easier for them to just shoot me a text back. And so I talk to a lot of my customers that way. Another way that I can talk to my customers, of course, and you probably can in your companies, make sure your mics are on mute so I can hear y'all's background. And it's being recorded. So email. A lot of companies deal with email. I have an email I am on the board of the Little League. I have an email for my full-time job. I have an email for my personal life, an email for the school. And I was counting one day at 2 in the afternoon to see, I just want to see how many emails I get in a day. And at 2 in the afternoon, I had already over 80 emails for the day between work, school, personal. So that's a lot of communicating. That's a lot of information in and out. So the way you communicate with people and the way you word things is important. So so email, we have email, we can call people, text people. One way that I manage over the eastern half of Oklahoma. So I have several different people who I have to help that aren't in the location that I'm in. So my company has 2 different chat systems. We have a system called Jabber, and one of them is Skype. We have a Skype business account. So I sometimes I can send an instant message to my coworkers, whether they're in the building or outside. Another thing is, much like Zoom, we have a screen share where I am the only person on the eastern half of Oklahoma that does credit. So whenever I need help or I need somebody to show me something or I'm getting trained on how to do something, I reach out to someone else in the district and they can screen share and go on, much like I am here, and show me what to do and how to do it. So that's one way that my company is trying to keep up with the times. Back in the day, before we had this type of communication, you would have had to fly me to Kansas City where my boss is, or I'd have to drive to Kansas City, something along the lines of that to get the training that I need. So Communication and the way that you are able to present that saves time, saves money, and saves a lot of headaches. I'd be interested in the chat box if you have a different way of communicating that I haven't listed. So if you have something that I haven't said, I'd love to see that. So in the chapter, we talk about perception, and it's the process by which individuals attend to, organize, interpret, and retain information from their environment. One thing that the book does talk about is that we are going to interpret our information from our upbringing, our surroundings, and just everyone has a different history and a different interpretation of what is being said. So I'm trying to think of a good example that, and I can't come up with one right off my head, but there's something else to think about is generations. So different generations are going to interpret things differently. So a baby boomer interpreting information coming from a company may interpret that different than a millennial. So it's really important to understand how you're coming across to somebody and what their understanding is of the situation and how they will interpret it. Let's see, and it kind of talks about here through the perceptual filters. This was on your book on like page 535 or something like that. And I really I talked about most of all of this. Something in the book that I found really interesting was it talked about, they did a study where someone would be asking for directions and they would stop somebody on the road or on the sidewalk and they would ask for directions, and two people carrying a door would walk between the two people communicating. And the person that was asking directions would switch off with somebody else that was carrying the door. And most of the time, the person that was giving the directions didn't even notice that that the two had switched out. So it just goes to tell you that people aren't always, in tune and always listening. And that's another thing it talks about in the book is when you're listening, how well do you listen? I was reading part of it where it talks about when someone's trying to talk to you and you interrupt them, or you come to conclusion, or you're not hearing everything. I do some of the things that it says, and sometimes when people are talking, I tend to interrupt them, and I don't mean to, but I'm self-aware of it, and I try to work on that part of my communication. Whenever you are communicating, that's the problem with communication nowadays through the technology we have, is you have to watch what you say, because it can be interpreted a various amount of ways. And so we work in a system where we have to use caps locks and everything. And so I hop in and out of that system writing emails. And one day, a customer I knew well, she had asked me a question. I responded in all caps, not thinking. And she came back with, "Are you yelling at me?" And she sounded a little offended. And I explained to her the situation. But it's all about perception. We email all day long as coworkers with all caps, and we all just know what's going on. But to her, to my customer, she thought I was yelling at her. The formal communication channels: downward communication, upward communication, horizontal communication. So there's this lists out the different types of communication. There is one-on-one communication through coaching, counseling, and if you're a manager or a supervisor, you do a lot of coaching, a lot of counseling. There's nonverbal communication, like if you look bored, if you're annoyed, if you're excited, that's all nonverbal. Any communication that doesn't involve words. So I can usually tell nonverbal communication from my kids because they don't want to say something, but I can read it on their faces. Let's see. Whenever I did my first class, did you have a question? Okay, giving feedback. Whenever I started this class, I went in and I think I had a few of you that didn't do peer post, and so I would grade it out, and I just said there were no peer posts. And so I got feedback from my boss saying, this is how you could give better feedback to you guys. And so that's something I worked on for you guys with my job. So giving feedback, there's destructive and there's constructive. And it was very constructive. This is what you're doing really good. This is how it can make it even better. And so giving feedback to your employees, if you're a manager, is really important. So they understand your expectations and where we're trying to get them. Managing organization-wide communication, improving transmissions by getting the message out. Again, we're talking about emails, online discussion forums. We do have online discussion forums with my company, but not so much as we tend to get in email chains, and that sometimes gets annoying if you're in an email chain and you don't want to be a part of it just keeps going and going. You have to be thoughtful about that if you get in one of those. Televised videotaped speeches and meetings. Our quarterly meeting for my company is televised, or we can log on and rewatch it, much like this class, and voice messaging. So there's a lot of different ways to communicate within an organization. At home, you might communicate through Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. There's Snapchat. So those are other ways that you have to communicate and to talk to your family, to talk to other students, to talk to me. When I first went to college, we didn't email much, but we did email, but we definitely never chatted. We never talked through the internet like I talked to you guys, because it just wasn't around. So it's really neat. Even, I graduated with my last degree back in 2006, and we were just starting to really get into Skype meetings and talking like that. So, even over the last 2-3 years, things have really evolved and really changed, and it made communication easier. When I first went to college, we definitely didn't have internet courses. So it's a great evolution of communication. And so you have to be changing to stay with the times. One thing I've told you guys multiple times, I worked in banking for years. And so they always did these surveys. They wanted to know what they were doing and what they were doing good and what they were doing not so good. So surveys are good to get constructive feedback. It's not always constructive. Sometimes when you're sending them out to the public, they're a little destructive. You make one person upset, and they're going to use that opportunity to come back with you and tell you what you did wrong and tell you how you should be doing it. But you have to take that with a grain of salt. If 99% of the people are saying, you do this well, work on this, and one person comes back and says, hey, you guys stink, you have to realize that there's always going to be someone out there giving you some hate. So survey feedback is good. Blogs are interesting. You can get feedback on blogs through the comments and things like that. And a lot of companies, when I think of blogs, I think of Facebook. I follow my bank on Facebook. I follow the BOK. I follow several companies around town. And I can see what's going on there, whether they're offering a special, if they're closed, if something's going on. So that's kind of what I think about when I say blog. I think I just skipped a bunch. Let's see. I didn't. Okay. So that is chapter 15. Let's hit chapter 17 really quick. And let's scroll down. So I'm going to use the book probably more so than these slides on this, because I was looking over the slides in the book, and I kind of like some of the information just directly out of the book. And I know it covers the chapter, but I kind of want to change it up from what's on the slides. So here is where it talks about, this was in your book, about using information technology to sustain a competitive advantage. So does the information technology create value? So I hate to keep going back to it, but I'm going to use banking for this. So does the information technology create value? So let's talk about online banking. Would online banking before, say this was 10 years ago, would online banking create a value to our customer? No. There's no competitive disadvantage. If it does create an advantage, it's something that can be competitive for you, for your company standalone. And I'll get back to that here in a second with Walmart. So yes, online banking would create a competitive advantage. If you're one of the small town banks, you're probably not offering it online banking. So it's kind of important to me as someone who lives out in a rural area to have online banking. So yes, it creates an advantage. So is this information technology different across competing firms? Yes. So some banks offer online deposits, check deposits, withdrawals. You can do different things just depending on how high tech the bank is. So yes, it can be different. So is it difficult for another firm to create or buy the information technology? No. So it's just a temporary competitive advantage, because if you watch the news nowadays, more and more people are coming online with online banking, offering more online mobile deposits, and things like that. Let's see. I was going to say right now, I shop at the Glenpool Walmart, and right now they are changing everything up. So they just installed these scanners, and it's so new. I haven't even got to use it yet, but I've seen it. They're installing these scanners, and it's hooked to the shopping cart, and you go around and scan your stuff, and you use a separate checkout. Again, we're eliminating the need for someone to bag our stuff, to scan our stuff. So they have several different options, and they're kind of creating a competitive advantage right now, but other companies will catch up. So at our Walmart, you can order online, drive through and pick it up. You can order online and go inside and pick it up. You can go in, pick everything up, self-checkout, go in, scan everything, bag it, pay for it, and leave. Or you can do the old-fashioned, go pick it up, have someone scan it, and bag it, and do all of that, and then leave. But I'm going to tell you, it's getting less and less where there's people helping you check out, because it costs money to have the people scanning and doing all of that. And it's easier to have us do it and save that money. So Walmart is always trying to think about have the competitive advantage. And I think the book talks about Kroger whenever they give their example of a competitive advantage in the book. And I apologize. I said I would use the book. I'm looking for a specific part. Let's see. It'd be helpful if I was in the right chapter. Okay. So let's go on to the next slide. This is the part in the book that I really liked and I wanted to follow along with. So characteristics of useful information: it has to be accurate, complete, relevant, and timely. And I don't have the best lighting in here, so let me find it. I think this is where it talks about Kroger is in the accurate part. They said that Kroger had gone in and done ultraviolet, or they had used I think it said ultraviolet, I'm trying to find the page, but to see when their peak times were, when people were in the building, and they would go in and see that it was busy after work during lunch, and they took their wait times by adjusting from the information that they got from 4 minutes to, I think it was like 24 seconds or 26 seconds. So the way that they got accurate information was using technology and going through and doing that through that, instead of having someone go out there and count. The book talks about how it's expensive to pay somebody to do the legwork and to go in to get all that information. You also want to make sure that the information is complete. So you can't go in and use statistics that says, we're busier during the day, but at specific times we're less busy, and so on and so forth. Can we be more specific? We need complete information. What times are we more slow? Is it busier? Is it slower during, the time when people are going to work at 8 in the morning, 7 in the morning? The information has to be complete to make a complete decision or a thought out process. Is it relevant? So the relevant information, I mean, it's all common sense. If I'm giving you information, if right now we're talking about communication, and I wouldn't put it, I wouldn't be opposed to going off on another venture and talking about something else that doesn't relate the topic. But if it's not relevant, if I'm telling you a story that's not relevant to communication, to information, if I'm telling you a story about skydiving, that has nothing to do with this. So it's not relevant and it's not helpful, the information you're trying to collect. And it has to be timely. So if I give you information if I give you statistics for back in 2004 to help you make a decision for something today, that's not timely information. It's not going to be helpful. So it's really a disadvantage and not an advantage. So that's something to be mindful with. Again, cost of useful information. This goes back in the book to talk about if you have somebody physically doing it versus doing it with technology. Here it just continues to go about manual, electronic, using barcodes. I don't know if you've ever used the codes on here, the tags where it shows I guess it's the RFID tags. I can pick up my prescription with my phone. I go in, it tells me, hey, your prescription's ready. I put in my credit card information on my app. I go in and tell the pharmacy, hey, I'm here. I scan my phone, it pays for it. It lets them know that I'm there, and I pick it up and I leave. So that's all electronic. I don't have someone coming up to me going, what is your name? What is your birth date? What is this? What is that? What is this? Okay, here's your stuff. Let me have your payment. We took all of that and condensed my time down. I can put it in quick because I know it. I'm not having to use an employee, so it saves on their labor, and so therefore saving time, saving money. And I'm all about getting in and out because I have kids and 2 jobs, and I just want to be on my way. So data mining, process of discovering unknown patterns and relationships in large amount of data. You hear a lot about this, data mining, and a lot of companies do it. So make sure you understand all of that in the book. Types of data mining, supervised and unsupervised. Supervised would be user tells the data mining software to look and test for specific patterns and relationships in data sent. And unsupervised, user tells the data mining software to uncover whatever patterns and relationships it can find in a data set. So what do you think Facebook is doing? Or if any of you have an Alexa, we have an Alexa, and she's listening now because I said her name. Alexa, stop. So have you ever looked up something on Amazon and then all of a sudden it shows up as advertisement in your Facebook? We have reason to believe, and it could just be conspiracy, but one day my kids were home and they were playing video games. They were playing Mario Kart, and then all of a sudden Mario Kart, my husband's phone is hooked up to the speaker that her name starts with an A. His phone is hooked up to it, and then all of a sudden Mario Kart started showing up. And so are they data mining? Are they supervising some of the conversations? We don't know. We're going to find out. I assume one day we're going to come back and hear that Amazon is listening in, and that's how they're data mining. But Facebook is probably the biggest example. Is you see it all the time. You'll go look at something and it pops up and wants you to buy it. If you shop through Amazon, you'll have things pop up and that says, hey, this is something you might like. So they're getting that information. They're seeing what you like. They're seeing how you want to shop. People who bought this also wanted this. And, it works because there's been times I buy something, I'm like, oh, that looks interesting. So the data mining works. Patterns identified by data mining, association or affinity patterns, sequence patterns, predictive patterns, data clusters. Predictive patterns would be kind of like, hey, I bought a baseball bat. I might be interested in a baseball glove. So it's predictive. Let's see. Protecting information. This is something that, working in the credit and finance world, this is something that I deal with on a daily basis, and I go through training after training after training to make sure that I am protecting customer information, because I can see social security numbers, I can see credit history, I know I have access to credit cards, bank account numbers, things like that. So it's really important to companies to make sure that that's not getting out, because then we have to come back, like some of the companies have recently and say, hey, all of your information was taken because we didn't have good security. And one example of that would probably be Experian. Right now, more than most people in the US have had their information compromised because they didn't have good enough protection to keep our stuff safe. So one thing that companies may do is they have firewalls, authentication. You've had to go in and click all the pictures with the car, and you do it 4 or 5 times. Or we're going to send you a text and then come back and put the text in the box. Or we're going to send you a code. Or what's your mother's maiden name? What street did you grow up on? Put in this stupid F6972 code, and it's all discombobulated. So those are just different ways that they're trying to keep our information protected, keep it safe. Another way would be the thumbprint login. It's just another added layer of protection. It is annoying. It does slow up the process, but it does keep you safe. So you have to appreciate that. When your information gets out, much like Experian, other companies that have had data breaches, you kind of lose respect for them, and you don't want to use your information there or shop there because they didn't do what it took to protect your information, and now you're getting new debit cards, you're setting up new checking accounts, you're fighting with someone taking your money. So it's really important to have that good protection. Internal access and sharing. I see this internal access and sharing, and it reminds me much of, since I don't work at the school, I log on remotely and I can still access my computer at the school. So that's another way to communicate. Right now, I'm not logged on to my work computer. I'm logging on at home. I'm going on through my course connection, exactly like you guys are. I go and I click on the link the same place you guys do. And so that's how I communicate. But I do have the ability, if I need to access our intranet, I can't do it from my computer at home. I have to log on remotely and use, down here, you see intranets, which are private company networks. So if I need to log on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I go in and I log whether or not y'all participated for the week. So I have to go in and do your attendance. So I can't do that from my computer. I can't access y'all's personal information from my computer because they have firewalls and they have protection. So I have to log on and do that through my computer at the school. And so that's why they have the intranet, and it keeps your stuff safe. The corporate portals, a lot of you probably have corporate portals. They're usually found on the intranet. So just more ways to keep things safe. External access and sharing, much like what I'm doing now. External access. Electronic data interchange, EDI, allows 2 companies to convert their purchase and ordering information to standardized format to enable direct electronic transmissions of information between company systems. So we actually utilize EDI where I work at Ferguson. We have companies that will use a spreadsheet. They'll put in, hey, and remember I work in plumbing and construction, stuff like that. So we may have a builder that goes in and says, I need 4 bathtubs, 3 toilets, 2 valves, and go through and fill out this spreadsheet. And they have a system that they can go in and put it on, and it'll transfer over to us, order it, and charge them and do all of that. And it's through this electronic data interchange. So I honestly didn't work with EDI before I went to Ferguson. So it's a newer thing to me, but it's really interesting because it allows a company to utilize something that they're familiar with and something we're familiar with, and it allows us to exchange information. Web services, extranets. We use standard protocols to describe data that can be processed by different computer systems and companies. Extranets, networks that allow companies to exchange information and conduct transactions with outsiders, much like the extranet that we use. So that's about it. So that's chapter 17. So this week we really focused on communication, the way you present it. You have to be careful about, you have to be thinking about who's receiving the information and how they're going to take it in. If I come in and talk to someone who is a baby boomer versus someone who's a millennial, they're both going to process that information differently. When I worked at Enterprise, I had employees that were old enough to be my parents, and then I have employees that were younger than me. And I had to, usually sometimes I would have to go in and I would have to give information differently to different people because they took it in differently, or they wanted to receive their information differently. I had one employee who, when she called in, when she was sick, she wanted to text me, hey, I'm not coming in, I don't feel good. And that's just kind of where we're going with the world today. And some people may disagree. My boss prefers me to send her a text in the morning if I'm sick or if I'm not coming in. Just shoot me a text and let me know. Back when I worked at the bank, I could have never sent a text in. They would have fired me. So it's all about, my boss was, she was probably a baby boomer, and she would never accept that. So it's all about people's perception and their surroundings and what they're used to. So this week, that's enough for the readings and the chapters. This week's discussion 4.1. So let's talk about the discussions. Discussions, you need to put your discussion in by Tuesday at 11:55. You have to have it posted to get a grade. If you posted on Wednesday last week, I've been really lax on it and giving you partial credit, and I'm not supposed to. So this week, you have to get it posted by Tuesday at 11:55 to get credit for it. Anytime after that, if you write a discussion, I can't give you credit for it. It's on the due date schedule that we talked about, and I'm talking about it here. I'm giving you warning. It's due Tuesday, and then I'll grade it after that. For your 2 peer responses and going in and doing that, that's due by Thursday at 11:55 p.m. So if you do it on Friday, Saturday, I won't be able to give you credit. This week's discussion, please make sure you review Chapter 15 before attempting this discussion. It's essential that you refer to the textbook in order to receive full credit. So what type of perception and communication problems have been faced with as a manager or as an employee? I would say the biggest communication problem that I've ever faced is the generational gap. Sometimes that's an issue. Not where I currently am, but that's been a past issue. Explain where the basic perception process you think the communication problems occur, background experience, and current experience. How would you have done things differently? What are the best ways to manage communication and information in your core area? Again, I'm going to remind everybody, peer post, give you 10 points. And I say this in the video, but when I go back and grade, I still see a chunk of people not doing peer post. And when you do a peer post, make sure you're not going on and saying, hey, great job. It has to be something that's substantial. So it needs to be at least 4 sentences long. You know what, you do a really good job of explaining your situation here, what you could have done different. You did really good at this situation. You have to make it meaty. It has to be meaningful to get your 10 points. So you have to do it on 2 people. You have to make 2 comments, at least 4 sentences long. And again, I really, really appreciate it if you can number it 1, answer the question, 2, answer the question, 3, answer the question. So when I go through, I can line up your grading rubric and grade your paper. So that's the discussion for this week. If you are going to business law starting next week, it's going to be the same expectation. So we're just getting practice up for that. If you have a begin, we're going to go through all of that again. We'll talk about this professional development assignment, the final paper, and then I'll try to get you guys out of here a little early. I know I'm just rambling on and you probably have better things to do. Let's see. So this assignment due Saturday, next Saturday, the job journey assignment, informational interviews. Step 1, locate the job journey. There's the My Course Connection. They tell you how to get there. And then they explain on page 24, the job journey, you'll find information on the informational interviews. Answer the following questions. Again, step 1, on step 2, if you'll lay out the dots and put your answers so I can go in and answer question 1, 2, and 3. You can label them question 1, 2, or 3, or however you want, so I can line it up. Make sure whenever you're using, I've seen it a few times and I've really not counted off for it because it's pretty common. If you're using 2 and 2, T-O and T-O-O, T-O-O means also. So make sure you're really, if you're going to somewhere, it's T-O. T-O-O is also. So if you can use the word also, use the 2 O's. Just make sure that you're really watching that. And there seems to be a common mistake that I'm seeing as well. And it's not been habitual, so I've really not hit on it, but it's really important in the business world. When I get emails all the time from people, and when I come across one that it's bad English or bad grammar, you know, you don't mean to, but you instantly, you're like thinking, you know, is this person good at communicating? So you want to make sure that you're coming off and giving good grammar and good spelling. So it's really important in the business world because people tend to make judgments on bad grammar. And I know people want to say no, they don't, but they do. Let's see. So here's your final. Your final is probably the most difficult thing you've done this time in reference to time and doing things. It's worth 100 points. And so you want to really make sure that you're taking your time and following the rubric. You see here that a minimum of 5 credible sources in APA format. If you don't know what APA format is, get with me. It's listed on a separate reference page, so don't add it to, if you do 3 pages or 4 pages, don't add it onto that. You need a separate page with your references. It's required. It needs to be in APA format, spelling, grammar, punctuation, a conclusion, and just make sure, you know, print out that rubric and put it next to your computer when you're doing your assignment. And make sure, just follow the directions. That's probably the biggest advice I can give you, is follow the directions on this management case study. It needs to be 3+ pages. If you do 2 3/4 pages, that's unacceptable. You want to fill up all 3 pages. Let's see. You have to use EBSCOhost for 3 of your 5 references. And I know that not everybody loves EBSCOhosts, but I think for this assignment, you'll be just fine. If you have any questions, let me know. There's your username and password. And I think that's about it. These are the topics, ideas for the environment, for this workplace environment thing. And I guess that's about it. I don't know. Does anyone have any questions? Y'all can type in the chat box or talk. I'm looking through y'all's chats. Let's see. Samantha earlier said, I worked for a sales company that had its own social media platform for all employees and managers. It was, for the most part, really helpful. 15 years ago, Jennifer says, before social media, Alorica had their own Yahoo chat room for employees to communicate for immediate responses. That's pretty neat. So we have put in the reference for APA format. Does the whole paper need to be in APA format? You know, I read through the directions. I didn't see that the directions said it needed to be in APA format. If the directions don't say so, then no. But if the directions do, then do it. I haven't read it in that big of a detail. So, so no, if it doesn't say so. I hope that answers your question. You know, another thing I was going to tell you guys is, I told you my company gives me this phone and I have to carry it around for them. And I was going to show you, I had to go to a meeting in Dallas, and I don't know if y'all can see it. No, you're probably not going to be able to see it. But they created an app for us. And during this, it was a 3-day event, they would push notifications out to us through this application and say, hey, don't forget in 20 minutes breakfast starts. And hey, it was great seeing you guys today. And it had a list of check-ins and a map of the area. And so that was one way to communicate. They knew we all had phones because they gave them to us. And the app was really helpful during that time. So that was another way to communicate. So does anybody else have a question? All right. If nobody has a question, we're going to wrap it up and let you get on your way. If you need anything, just shoot me an email. And if you have a 0, I don't know if you do or don't. If you have a 0 on your grade and you turned it in, get with me so I can track down what happened. If you have a 0 and you didn't turn it in, get something turned in for some kind of late credit, because you'll need the points. So that's it. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you later.